What geographic area are we talking about?
So the Bali Toises, they didn't have a yeshiva like Lakewood with thousands of people. They only had about 60 to 80 talmidim. There were two yeshivas, one in Germany and one in France, where where although it was very small in Echos, in Kamos, it was very great in Echos. So although there was a small number of Bali Toises, but each one was a goyin oilam, a godel. So the first Rishon, the first for the Balatoshis was Rebbeinu Tam, and well, there's a whole bunch of Balatoshis that we encounter all the time. The Riazakin and the Ravan and the Rashbam and the Ri, right? There's tons and tons of Rishonim Rebbeinu Peretz, and the end of the Tkufa Rebbeinu Peretz was towards the end of the Tkufa, more towards the end of the 1200s. So I forget which one of the Tosfos wrote the Sefer Zechronis, but the period of time that they lived through was partially the period of Richard the Lionheart, who was at the beginning of the period. He was an English king, and the day of his coronation, dignitaries came from all over the world or the region to his coronation, including the wealthy and prominent Yidden. And the goyim that were there said, how is it not a slap in the face to this King Richard that there should be a Jew by his coronation? But they didn't tell Richard Lionheart, he wasn't such an anti-Semite. They publicized a rumor that the king wants everybody killed, wants all the Jews killed. And there's a horrible, horrible pogrom that slaughtered many, many Yidden in that time, at that period, and his doorkeeper, his butler, I guess his right hand man, you would call him, was trying to conceal it from the king because he didn't want the king to order that it should stop. And the king hears a commotion in the street, and after he hears the commotion, he asks his right hand man, "What's going on?" He couldn't look it up on his phone, right? He asked, "What's going on?" So his fellow told him, "No, nothing. It's just the youth are partying because they're so happy about your coronation." Anyway, it didn't take too long. A couple of days later, he found out what happened, and he was not happy about it. And this Rishon writes, he tied the hair of this second in command to the tail of a horse, and he made the horse run through the whole city until this guy, his body was torn to shreds. Hamas does that regularly with a motorcycle. I don't know if you know that, to their own people. So that's what he did. So the Balatosh is right that at least there was some level of Nekaim Ne'nenu, Nikmas Dama because at least there was some type of retribution. And then there was the famous story in York, the massacre of York, where all the Eden were gathered together and killed. It was such a bad period of time that it was not an unusual thing for people to commit suicide, for Eden to commit suicide en masse, so that they should avoid being forced to accept Christianity. And in one of these big pogromim, I think it was the York massacre, where one of the famous Balatoshis was actually murdered. So it was a horrific time. So the rumor had it that this long Toysvis was written by Balatoshis, who knew that the next morning they were going to be standing judgment for whatever scam trial they were going to, and they knew they likely wouldn't be alive, so they hurried to put this information down. Now, don't think for a half a second that they decided that Daf Ayin Zayin in Bava Kama should have a long Toysis and only have one line of Gemara, because the Tzur Sadaf, as we have it, came many, many, many years later with the first printer. So it's the printer who decided to put it here. The long Toysis, if you see the original Kisvei Yad of Toysis, they were Gil Yonis, they were scrolls, they were handwritten. In those days, they didn't have printing yet. Printing came out in the 1400s. So it was all written in a long scroll, and it happened to be this was a very, very long stickle. Why the printer decided to place it, to place this stuff like this, we don't know, but could be they wanted. They also had an idea to put this all on one daf to remember the magnitude of what happened over there. So that was just some interesting background information on Daf Ayin Zayin. Okay, we are right now in middle of the sugya. We're actually in the middle of something. The Gemara is discussing. The Gemara is discussing. I believe we have a machlokes, Rabbi Yochanan and Shlokish, if tzvicha and mechira are connected to each other. In other words, in a case where you wouldn't be chayav for tzvicha, like a treifa, would you be mechuyev for mechira dalvei? That was the shiloh that the Gemara brought a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Shlokish about. Our Gemara's discussion was in a case where you can't do mechira, would there be a chiyuv for the tzvicha? So thank you so much. Rishlaka said they are interconnected, and you wouldn't be mechuyev in tzvicha if you can't do mechira and vice versa. Rabbi Yochanan said they're independent. So the Gemara says over here, Klaim. One of the items that were quoted in the Brisa that we wanted to bring a raya to Rabbi Yochanan from, or that Rabbi Yochanan wanted to bring a raya to Rabbi Yochanan from, was that Klaim b'mechira. Klaim, there's a chiyuv dal ve'an. So the Gemara challenged that. How could there be a chiyuv dal ve'he for Klaim? It says se in the parsha of dal ve'he ki yignev shar oy se utavachai oy mecharei. And we know se, Rava says, there's a rule all over the Torah that whenever the Torah uses the word se, it's lahaitzias aklayim. So Ibazoi, you shouldn't be chayiv dalad v'hei if you stole klayim and shechted it. So the Gemara answered, Shiny hacha do amar kra oi l'rabbi aklayim. There's the word oi. Oi tells you that although se said no klayim, oi says yes klayim. The Gemara asked, I by korbanos. Oi tells us to exclude klayim. So the Gemara, it all depends on the context. In the case of korbanos, where the case listed was shar oiseh, was kesef v'eis. Kesef v'eis, if you mated them, they would produce offspring. Rashi says because their gestation period are both 5 months. Therefore, the items, the pratim listed in the parsha of korbanos would include klayim. Therefore, the oy says change it, and there's no klayim allowed. But the pasuk of dal vei says shur kesef, which by definition tells us that klayim would not be mechuyev in dal vei because you cannot mate a shur and a kesef and have anything come out of it. Therefore, oy is going to be marba klayim, and that's how we left off yesterday. Frek the Gemara. Moving on to Ein Chesam Adal. Let's go into the pasuk of Kachim, because by Kachim, what it does say is it does say kesef hayes, but also shor. It says shor or kesef hayes, and if you look at the shor and the kesef, you have exactly the same scenario as we have by Dal Vei. Shor and kesef cannot reproduce together, so therefore klayim is not included. So all should be the rabbish of klayim. So why are we looking at the shor or kesef and say that oy? So why we're looking at the kesef ayes and saying that oy is my klayim? Look at the shor kesef where oy will be marba klayim. That is the question. Nami nemar shor kesef. There's a shor kesef ayes. So you focus on the kesef ayes, which could be klayim. So oy in between them says no klayim. But look at the first part of the pasuk. Shor kesef. So ain't that the yochel loytzi klayim ibnei. That's just like the case of Dalvei, where shor and kesef you can't be moji klayim ibnei, and nevertheless the Torah says oy to maybe include klayim v'narbi, so we should include klayim. Zok Gemara, no, mideseifa lemayit reisha nami lemayit. Since kesef oy eis is going to be b'mayit klayim, therefore the oy of shor kesef will be b'mayit klayim as well. Frek Gemara, what do you mean adrabah? Maybe look at the first step first. Midareisha l'rabbis, since the shor kesef that oy would include klayim, say for nami the rabbis. Zakmar, that would not be logical. Why? Hi mai. Iyamrit b'shalom alamayit. We used the two oys. One oy we used to say that you cannot use klayim for a carbon, and the second oy we learned it a number of days that you can't use a nidme. What was a nidme? A nidme was an animal that was born out of two kosher parents, but it looks like a non-kosher animal, right? It's like if two parents, if a Jewish couple has a black child, with the wife is going to say it's a nidme. It came from two kosher parents. Boom, it doesn't look like us. The husband might think it's Klayim. What?
Are you assuming the parents aren't black?
I'm sorry. I apologize. For that I could have got anything else I said, no problem with YouTube. Now I'm going to get thrown off of YouTube.
The guys get a picture from the sheep with the
Sagt mir, hi, Mai. If you're going to say that the oil is being mayit, it makes sense who the itzrich trey miyutim. I need two miyutim. Why? The apagav the imit klayim, even though the Torah tells us you cannot bring klayim for a carbon, nidme is not as bad as klayim. Nidme, its parents are perfect, right? So therefore, itzrich lemut nidme. Eli amrit l'rabbis, if you can say come to marba trey mi bui lama. Once I know already that kalayim is mutter to be brought for a carbon, hashta kalayim irbile nidme mi boy. If you have a rebate to be b'mayit kalayim, surely I'll know that a nidme can be brought. So the fact that we have two miyutim, it must be that the Torah by carbon is trying to be b'mayit. One eye to say you cannot bring kalayim for a carbon, and the other eye to say that you cannot bring a nidme as a carbon. Gavaltic. We're going to get soon into a little bit more detail into animals that don't look like their parents. So what if a shar and a para mate, and what's born out of them? A gamal. What if that happens? So that's a discussion that the Gemara has. Is that a kosher animal or not?
every oirev.
The stork got mixed up.
From the element too.
Animals have melon. What's that?
And every oirev, every crow when they get born, they're white.
Crow.
Crow.
Ah,
There's a America.
okay.
So that's why it says Livnai oirev ashikrui. So the parents think it's not their children.
Aha.
So they abandon them.
Ah,
And Hashem creates small bugs in their mouth. How? Because
otherwise I wouldn't be able to eat.
yeah,
Aha. Unbelievable.
so it's born like that, and then it changes.
Elahad Amarova. It happens also by eating. Sometimes you have two chassidim and they give birth and the child becomes a litvak.
Kasishud. You have a kid.
So to Gemara, as follows. Elahad Amarova. Zebon Av. Rabin made this massive generalization. Binyana. Kol mokoim shenemar seh. Einoi ela lahachis aklai. Exactly what halacha is Rava trying to illuminate with his major announcement. Lamai hilchas. Ila kachim, if Rava was referring to kachim, where it says seh, so that's how I know that by kachim, you cannot use kalayim for kachim, behedik sivahu. We just went through it. It says shara kesef, and the oi is prat l'kalayim. So Rava's binyanav, we actually have to uncover two things. We have to uncover the source of Rava's binyanav, and we have to uncover the target of his binyanav. We're soon going to see his target isn't kol atarakula. We're going to find kom one case where because of Rava, we know that Klaim doesn't qualify. And if you look at the long toishes at the bottom of Ein Zayin and Beis, there's a machloikus between Rashi and Tosfos what the source of the binyanav is. Tosfos learns it's the pasuk by Korban Pesach, where it says, I'm going to read it out of Tosfos. I don't remember the lashon pasuk. Actually, it's coming right up. So I might as well read it from our parsha. I think it's in Doi even. So it's Dover Be'itoy Ma'toiv. It's Bereshis Yud Daled. I'm sorry, Shemosh Yud Daled. Shemosh Yud Daled.
Winner strikes.
Or is it Yud
It's
Yud Beis? It's Shemosh Yud Beis Yud Daled. I'm sorry? That's not where we learn it from, but I'm going to find the pasuk shortly. It says, "Se Tamim Zachar ben Shana Yilachem," and then it says afterwards, "Mina Kvasim u'Mina Izim Tikachu." So Tosfos learns that the Mina Kvasim u'Mina Izim Tikachu is where we learn the binyan av from. Rashi learns it's from a different pasuk, I think by Bechor. Anyway, if we're at this pasuk, it's in Parshas Boy. Today, this week is Boy, right? But if we're in Parshas Boy, I have to share with you my favorite story. Everybody heard the story before, but I'm going to tell you the story anyway. Everybody knows that the B'shur Leib Diskin was a genius of a person, and he would be able to just look at a tree and tell you how many leaves there were on it. So someone said, "Big deal! I can make up any number. Are you going to go count it?" So he says, "Watch this." They asked him how many leaves were on it, and he said an amount. Then someone pulled 2 leaves off and says, "How many leaves are on it?" And he said the right amount with 2 less. So he obviously knows. He had a vision. He was able to see all that. He could look at a building and tell you how many bricks there were in it. It was unbelievable. That he was a genius. So Reb Chaim Kanevsky, we'll all agree, was also a pretty big genius. So they wanted to ask Reb Chaim Kanevsky, how many times does it say the word Moshe in the Torah? It's a famous story. So he said, I don't know, it's 212. So they said, no, you're wrong. There's actually 214 times that it says Moshe in the Torah. He says, no, it says it 212 times. The other 2 times that the computer mistook for the word Moshe, one of them is in our parsha, Parshas Boy. It says, V'miyimat habayis mihiyois miseh. So it's spelled Mem Shinei. And the other place is I think it's in Devarim when it talks about the halacha of Shemitah. It says Shemoit kol bal mashei yadoi. And those are the 2 words that the computer confused with Moshe. That's called knowing Torah.
By who? By Reb Chaim Kanevsky?
So B'miyimat habayis mihiyois miseh is the next pasuk right after our target pasuk of where Tosfos claims that the makar of Rava's binyan avis. So Zok Gemara, what is his target? What is the halacha that he's teaching? Ila Meiser, and if it's referring to Meiser, and once again we have a controversial Rashi. Ila Meiser means that by Meiser it uses the word se, and from Rava's binyan, I know that Meiser is only brought with a non-climb animal. Well, let's look. Does it say the word se in the parsha of Meiser? It actually doesn't. So Rashi asks, it doesn't say the word se. It says the word sign. That would still be good enough to apply the binyan of Rava, the puzzle. So Zokt the Gemara, you can't say that that's the purpose of the binyan av, because tachas yalef mikachim. We have a limit of tachas hashevet by Meiser, tachas imoy by karbanos that tell us that they share the halacha that they both cannot be brought with klayim. So I don't need Rava's binyan av for that. Tosfos actually doesn't like Rashi's pshat of tzoyin. He feels it doesn't say that. So Tosfos has a little bit of a different pshat in the sugya, but it's basing it on his understanding that there's a different makor for the binyan av. So anyway, we don't need Rava's binyan av to teach us halacha of Meiser, and ila b'chor maybe to tell us that you don't have to bring a b'chor if it's klayim. Havara yalef mi Meiser. There's also a limud ba'avarta kol patarechem by b'chor v'chol sheyaver tachas hashovet by Meiser to tell us that they also share halachas such as that klayim is exempt. Inami,
also such a kind.
that's right. Inami, or you could say nidme amrit loy. By kachim, you say that nidme is not kosher for a carbon. I'm sorry. Bechor shar is by a bechor. We know a nidme wouldn't have kedushas of bechor. Meaning, if a shar had a child that looked like a gomel, you would not bring it. It's bechor as a carbon. Achyehu shar ubechor shar. They both have to look alike. Kalayim boy. If bechor is not brought from a nidme, surely a bechor is not brought from kalayim. So why do I need Rava's grand opinion of that everywhere in the Torah where it says it excludes kalayim? It's relevant to one halacha only, peter chamor. Zok Rashi, the chsiv seh. It says by a peter chamor you redeem it with a seh. The kashmin Rava, and Rava is telling us the reason for the Mishnah that we're about to quote. Time of the Mishnah, the Katani ain't poidin beklayim behachu. The Mishnah says you're not allowed to be poida a chamor, a peter chamor with kalayim. How do we know it? From Rava's binyanav. Giditnan ain't poidin loy beegel, not with a calf. Veloy bechaya, not with a chaya. Veloy b'shchuta, and not with a shechted animal. Rashi says loy bechaya tziva. Aya loy b'seh is the lav seh karina bay. If it's shechted, it's not a seh anymore. It's called meat. Veloy b'treifa, and then it says veloy b'klayim. How do we know loy b'klayim? You know loy b'klayim because of Rava's binyanav. Veloy b'kvi, which is a cross between a behema and a chaya. So isn't that also klayim? So Rashi tells us klayim means if you have two different behemoths, that would be klayim. Kvi is a koi, a chai with a behema. And Moshe Stern tells me, I always like saying it over. What's the isser of klayim? The Rebbeinu Shalom made a perfect world. He doesn't need us to improve it. The tikkun olam chaver are apikorsim. They're boigdim in the Torah. But we think that we need to make a better world than what Hashem made, and we have to create our own species. And that's why Kvi or Koi, however, Koi is the name of a company that sells tractors. So Kvi is Koichi v'oitzim yadi. That's what it stands for. Koichi v'oitzim yadi, meaning we know better than Hashem. We know what species should be made. Frank the Gemara. I'm sorry.
And we make all the time. Climb. That's the same thing, no?
What do you mean we make climb all the time?
We make nectarines and whatever.
I'm not sure if you're allowed to make the lalaha. You're allowed to eat them. I don't know if you're allowed to make them. Zaktamar, Rabbi Elazar, the matzah b'klayim. Rabbi Elazar holds that you actually could be poida a peter chamor with klayim. It's not Rabbi Elazar matzah b'klayim. So mifnei shu seh, because he does identify klayim as a seh. L'mai hilchasa. So exactly what is Rabbi teaching us with his binyanav? Amalach Rabbi Elazar ki itmar de Rava. You know why we need a chiddush of Rava? Is l'tamei shenoiled min hatahar v'iburoi min hatamei. You have a tamei animal that was born from a tahar, so its mother was a tahar, the iburoi, but its sperm donor was a tamei. We're soon going to see this doesn't literally mean a tamei. We're soon going to see in Rashi on Amud Beis that what this is actually referring to is a mother cow and a father bull gave birth to a camel. It was a nidmeh, it wasn't klayim. It was a nidmeh, right? So this has kosher parents, but it itself is looking like a gomel, meaning it doesn't have split hoofs. It doesn't have split hoofs. It might chew its cud, but it doesn't have split hoofs, right? So it doesn't even have the simone kashrus. There's actually machlokes tanoim that we're about to learn whether or not that's allowed to be eaten. But what if now this camel went along and bred with another para? There, it's for sure called klayim, and ki itmar de rava l'tamei shenoiled minatar v'iburi minatame. What type of tamei are we talking about? That the father was a tamei, but he really came from kosher parents. It doesn't mean a chazer. How do I know it doesn't mean that? We're going to soon see in a second, because the Gemara is going to ask, a behemoth tameya cannot conceive with a behemoth Torah. So it must be azam in behemoth tameya that's close enough because it came from
Why is it called clan? If it's a deformed, because
it's considered a behemoth tameya. So tomorrow with the loik Rabbi Yeshua, and this will not be consistent with Rabbi Yeshua. The Rabbi Yeshua, according to Rabbi Yeshua, I don't need Rava's seh to teach me that halacha, because I know it already from the pasuk of Sek Sovim v'seh izim nafkale. Actually, Ovev Kevesh, the Imoi Kivsha, period. The mother and the father both have to be kosher aminim. So this leads us to a fascinating shaila. There's a famous Telza Claire. Is it a simon or it is a siba? In other words, that a kosher animal has to have split hooves and chew its cud, that a kosher fish has to have fins and scales. Is the fins and scales what makes it kosher? Is the chewing the cud and the split is what makes it kosher? Or no, the Rebbe wants to give us a litmus test how we could know which ones that is exerts a custom on that are kosher and which ones is exerts a custom on that are not kosher. So Hashem gave us these simon, but not that these simon have any shaykhs to making them kosher. That's how we know they're kosher. What's the nafkamina? What if I take a fish that has fins and scales and I play with its genes like they do all the time, and I make it grow without scales? So this way, it's so much easier to process. If you hold the simonim, if you hold the simon, no problem. It's the same fish. Grada, I'm able to modify.
Not the same.
But if you hold it to siba, then it shouldn't be good, right? So here's where it's going to be relevant, because this gomel had two kosher parents. So if you're going to say the simonim are merely a simon, that this is the right species, it looks like a gomel, it acts like a gomel, but lamais, it came from a para and a para, it's got to be kosher because the simon is there, the parents are there. But if it's a siba, this doesn't have those simonim, so it's not going to be kosher.
Look and act like a gomel, because you say that if that's gonna breed, then it's not kosher. There's the Shem fetish. It's not.
It could breed. This will work.
No, it works, but you're not allowed. It's klaim, you said. So even though you see from here, that even
that's the whole point. You have Rai Shamir there. It could be it's a siba, not a simon. That's right. Victor always used to teach me whenever I would assess a situation and I would think that it's a wild situation, he would tell me if it looks like a horse and walks like a horse and smells like a horse, it's probably a horse. Why are you going to say it's a zebra? Say it's a horse. Go with the pashtas, right?
Is there a documented case of this? Is this just a fabricated wild imagination? Like, I mean, why even bother?
Listen, you and I have both seen wonderful civilized parents who gave birth to Achaya. So you see, these things are possible. I don't know.
that's his
It's a birth, it's a birth defect.
What's that?
It's a birth defect.
Yeah, but a birth defect that it should be a perfectly healthy, normal functioning camel.
No, I mean a camel, no, but I mean maybe it has simonim that make it look like a camel.
I hear.
Like mamish a camel? That doesn't make any sense.
Then it's possible.
I mean, unless it's a
They
I don't
weren't
do it.
farmers. The Kaimla.
The place game learn out.
Okay, all these discussions are good to have. All these discussions are good to have at an Amud Aleph before 6:30. After 6:30, we cannot have any more discussions on Amud Aleph because we have a pretty big Amud Beis coming up. Zok to Gemara, break to Gemara. How could you say that it's possible for a behemoth tameya to father an animal with a kosher mother? Break to Gemara. Utahira mitameya mima abra. Would a tahira become pregnant from a tamei animal? Zok to Gemara in. As a matter of fact, it could happen. It could occur. Why? Because the case was the avid mikolut Rab Shimon is going to be a kolut, the kolut of Rab Shimon. What is the kolut of Rab Shimon? It's the animal that I described. So let's see Rashi inside, because as well as I give it over, doesn't compare to Rashi. So Zok the Helig Rashi, the aver mikolut Rab Shimon. Kolut means parsois of plutos. It doesn't. It may chew its cud, but it doesn't have split hooves. But the noilad minatar, it was the mother is a behemoth Torah. Rab Shimon Karile Tomei. Rab Shimon calls such an animal Tomei. Even though both of its parents were behemoth Tahiras, if it doesn't have split hooves, then Rab Shimon considers that a behemoth Tomei. He'll also to eat it. Although Rab Shimon holds you may eat it. The Tanya Reb Chayers, Rab Shimon Neimer, Gomel Shnei Pamim. When the Torah says it's also to eat a Gomel, the Torah mentions Gomel twice in the pasuk. Echad Gomel al Noilad min Gamla, the Echad Gomel al Noilad min Para. Even if it's a Gomel that was born from a Para, Zok Rab Shimon, that's also to be eaten. Va'afilu of Rasai min hatar mishar gomer. So even if the father was a shor and the mother was a para, and they gave birth to a gomel, still ka'asher le Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon knows this animal is also to be eaten because it's a siba. It's not a simon. It doesn't make a difference if we know that this is a birth defected par. If it looks like a gomel, meaning it has the shemani tahira of a gomel or the shemani tum of a gomel, it's also to eat. That's the svar of Rab Shimon. Upala galei Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua said, no, it's not a shemen, it's a siba. Heichad av rasay min atar mishar she'ein kolet. If both of its parents are ksherim, therefore it'll be mutter umatirai b'simen echad shel tahira oima legeir oima afis parsa. A zayvayit should have at least one simen. If it has neither simen, then it's too far away. V'dayrish, and he darshins differently. As zeh toichlu es hagomo. Zei ata oichel b'simen echad. Dafka a gomel, you are not allowed to eat if it only has one siman of the hayra. It only chooses its cut. Well, yesh acher, there's another very similar animal. So we have a machlokes tanoim between Rabbi Shimon, who says you may not eat such an animal, and Rabbi Yeshua who holds you may eat such an animal. So this animal, according to Rabbi Shimon, is tamei. According to Rabbi Yeshua, it's tar. So we're talking now about this animal that we're referring to as a tamei because Rabbi Shimon says you're not allowed to eat it. What if this animal now, this gomel now went and bred with a behemoth Torah? What would the halacha be with their child? Yochel af iburei min tamei kloimer yochel kashem shani machshir boy. Just like Rabbi Yeshua says, you're allowed to eat this animal. Kach ani machshir bivnoi. So too, I would say that the child of this gomel would also be kosher. In this abra para heimenu, if this gomel ended up breeding with a para behemoth Torah, Talmud Loimer, that's too much already. Seksovim b'saizim at yeinoilad mishnei kavasim sheyu aviv ve'imai kavasim. They both have to be of the same species, not one being a gomel. So Rabbi Yeshua learns it from his own pasuk. So Rabbi Yeshua doesn't need Rava's binyanav. But without Rabbi Yeshua, to like Rabbi Yeshua, you can use the binyan, according to Rabbi Lozer, who doesn't use it for binyan betachamar, he can use the binyanav of Rava to tell us that this animal would be usher to be eaten. So therefore, Achiyav v'im mikvasim, vahi psula, the benoi, the naftali Rabbi Shua mikvasim, mashmalei Rava miseh. Rava would learn it from his binyanav of Seh. Gewaltig. So that takes us to the end of the sugya. Rava's grand Gzeir Shava helps us either for pigeon petach hamor that you cannot use climb for it, or to tell you that this animal that was fathered by a gomel with chashav yichus, is still going to be usher to eat.
How should we be able to use climb? Climb is a spanur.
Like kerem, klai is usher, but not klai behemah. That's right. But klai behemah is not. But remember, even certain klai pears, we eat nectarines, we eat fruit that are still klai. You're not allowed to use them for a nesser, right? You're not allowed to make it. That's right, but it's not also enough. Boy, Rava, what happens if someone says harei alai oila? So if you say harei alai oila, you're mechuyev to bring that animal as a carbon, no matter what. And if the animal gets stolen, you got to come up with another one, right? No, harei alai, yeah.
It's an eight.
Harei alai is another. Yeah, that's right. No, harei alai, and he said this. I'm using this animal. He said harei alai, and he said I'm going to use this animal, right? And now, what type of animal did I give? When you say harei alai oila, you can give a bird, right? You can give a little animal, but you gave a beautiful shor par, right? Favorite shor. Now someone came along and stole it. So why is it? Why do we learn up until now that the guy has to pay me? I'm considered bailam because it's a davar agarim moment because I will have to replace it. But what will I have to replace it with? Do I have to replace it with a par? No, I can replace it with anything that would fulfill my nether. So the halacha is mi poter galev nafshei bekevesh l'rabbanon. According to the rabbanon, who holds that I'm allowed to just give a sheep instead of an ox, could the God say, I'm giving this back to you? Because all your losses, what your chiyuv is, what your garim l'mammon is. Or ba'oilas ha'oif, or according to, or even with a sheep as something as an oif, according to Rabbi Levi Nazariah. The Tanan, harei alai oila, yavi keves. That's what you have to bring. That's the stam meaning what it is, that's the minimum. Rabbi Levi Nazariah oimer, yavi tar b'nei yoina. So since I can get away with either keves according to the Tanakama, or even a bird, according to Rabbi Zayah, maybe that's all the guy that has to pay back. All I want to do is an oila, and therefore it's enough to pay me back. Or the Bala Carbon can say, I want to, I'm going to come, from here, I'm going to come to the Smithers with a bird. I'm about this guy. I'm going to come with a shine behind me. This is not good enough for me. Basar boy had the pasta, avada yichud. Gan the pater atzma bikevesh l'rabanan, la'oilas ha'oif l'rabelazah b'desayim. Rabacha b'reid Rabika, matin l'behedya. He learned there was never a shayla, it was always just halacha stated. Amarav harei la'oila v'ever shar u'bo'acha v'gomvay, pater atzmai, bikevesh l'rabanan, u'bo'oilas ha'oif l'rabelazah b'desayim. Beautiful. Zok the Mishnah. Machrei, what is a mechira? What is a mechira? Does it have to be 100% sale? Or what if there's some deficiencies in the sale? I'm selling this, but I want to keep 1/100th of the animal. Is that enough of a mechir to trigger a chiv dal vei? Or you had a shutfis. Rashi says it means I was a shutaf in it before I stole it. Or I shoichet when this nabla b'yadai. Or I shachted it and it became a nevela, meaning it was never a good shchita. Or hanoicher. Noicher, Rashi says, is you put a knife by its nose and you slice vertically down towards its heart. That's not a shchita at all. V'ma'aker, you stick your knife in and you rip out the simonim. That's also not a shchita. Because these do not pass the default test of mechira, nor do they pass the threshold for tvicha. What exactly are you withholding from this sale when you're selling an animal chutz v'mei shabai? Amarav, it means chutz midavar anitar imay b'shchita. It means something that would require shchita. So, for instance, if I'm keeping the wool or if I'm keeping the horns, that's not an issue. But if I'm keeping any meat which would normally require shchita, that's enough of a deficiency in the sale that it's not considered a mechir. For Levi Amar, chutz migi ze sell. Levi says no. Even if you get chutz from meat, you still would be. I'm sorry. Levi says that if it was so. Rav says if it's chutz b'shchita, it's not going to be good. Levi says even chutz migi sell, even that would not be considered a mechira because even that's part of what you have to sell.
Main.
Sorry, correct. Well, gizos is not the main. Gizos is anything that you would share. Yeah, for sure. Main meant who in the back. The chein tanya b'masnisa, and the price is the same thing. Chutz migi sell. Meis effect gemara. Machmer chutz miyada chutz mirag. Besides its hand or its foot, which would actually be something that Rav would tell us would be a deficiency. Levi would say this is a deficiency. This is perfectly consistent with the sheet of Levi. Rebbe argues on the Tanakama and says, "Dover hama akev b'shchita ein misham tashlum above chamisha, mishein akev b'shchita misham tashlum above chamisha." It has to be that if this limb is missing, the animal is automatically a nevela. So if its whole chest is missing, if the whole side of its body is missing, but if it's just missing an arm or a leg, the animal is still a kosher animal, and you can still shecht it. So again, Rebbe will be inconsistent with Rav, and Rav Shimon ben Elazar, who's the third shita, chutz. Sorry.
Leg and I think it's not.
If that's missing, the animal is still a kosher animal, and if you shecht it, you can eat the animal.
Kosher clothing. It's not inside.
Yeah. So Dr. Gemara, Shimon Elazar, chutz mikarna, except for tzorin, einay mishalem tashlumei arba v'chamisha, v'chutz migizayseha mishalem tashlumei arba v'chamisha. So we have three shitas. Levi has someone who he can hang his hat on, but Rav doesn't have anybody.
What's the
The Gemara is going to get into it. Bishlam of Levi kitanakama. Levi fits in perfectly like a tanakama. If there's a hair that wasn't sold, it's not a good mechira. Beautiful. Elul Rav, come on, Amri. Who is Rav hold like? Dr. Gemara, Rav. Amri, Dr. Gemara, Rav the Amar ki Aitan. Rav will be consistent with a different Reb Shimon ben Elazar, not the Reb Shimon ben Elazar in the brayso that we just quoted. The Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar Eimer, Machar chutz miyada, v'chutz miragla, einay mishalam tashlumei arba v'chamisha, which is exactly what Rav says. It's part of the meat. But chutz mikarna, or chutz migizayseha, mishalam tashlumei arba v'chamisha. Correct the Gemara, Chaim, Shaila b'Makom. What is the machlokes? We seem to have a four-way machlokes over here. What is the machlokes as to what constitutes a full mechira? Tanakama sover v'tavchay kulay ba'inan. You need to the same way when you're shechting the whole animal. Umachrei kulay ba'inan. So if you withhold even gizos, it doesn't matter if it's not an integral part of the animal. It's not a good mechira to be mechay b'dalvei. For Rebbe sover v'tavchay is midi tahava b'tvicha, something that is included in the tvicha, lafuke midi lahava b'tvicha, which means if it's something that's missing that it can no longer be shechted because it's considered dead, That's something that if you withheld that, it wouldn't be a good tficha. So therefore, umachrai dumi de tficha. And we're going to say whatever you would need that it should be a shchita, you'll also need that it should be a mechira. Rabbi Shimon Lazar Shavar karna bishleim with the horn, the loylam mix of kaima. It's not made to be cut off; it's made to stay on the animal. So therefore, if you withhold that, that's enough of an important piece that it's not called a mechira, a mechira. Therefore, but Gizay Seah, that's made to be shorn on a regular basis to the Megas Kaimi, that's not an integral part of the animal, and therefore, Loy have a shear. If you withheld the Gizois, you would pay Dal Vei, you Mashalom to Shlum Abba Chamisha. The Idich Tana Devei Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. What is the other Tana of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar who holds like Rav? That even Yodav Raglav. So Yodav Raglav, the Trichit Tficha have a shear. And the arm and the leg, in order to be able to eat those, you need shchita. In other words, if the arm and the leg was cut off and then you check the animal, although the animal is kosher, the arm and leg is not kosher. But Kranel Vigizasea, they don't need to be shechted. Therefore, Loyav is shear, therefore it's not considered a shear. Break the Gemara, but we have a steer in Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Kasher de Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Ad Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Dr. Gemara, no problem. Trey Tanoi, Valiba Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. It's a machlokes Tanoim, what Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said. Rav holds like the second Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar that we quoted. Tanu Rabban, Hagoyim is a kitas. Someone stole an animal that was already missing an arm or a leg. Ves a chigeres, or it was limping. Ves a suma, or it was blind. V'chein hagoyim behemas hashutfim. If someone steals the behema that belonged to shutfim, chayiv. If you do tficha mechira, in all these cases you're going to be chayiv. Ushutfim shaganvu peturin. But if two shutim together stole and then somehow made a tficha mechira together, they will be pater. Frank Gemara, we have a brayso that says shutim shaganvu are chayavin. Rav Nachman lo kasha kan the shutim shaganvu mechaverai. If the shutim stole from his friend, so then it's not v'tafcha kulabi yisura because he owns part of it. That's the brayso that says that shutim shaganvu are peturin. But it says shutim chayavin is b'shutim shaganvu be'alma. Frank Gemara, Esay Rabba Rav Nachman. Yachol shutim shaganvu mechaverai. You would have thought that a shutim was steals from his friend. The shutim shaganvu. They're lumped together. You chayav, and you might have thought they should be chayiv. So you see clearly that even the two shutim that stole are also going to be potter. So we just said that shutim shagam are going to be chayiv. If two shutim stole it, and then one shutim tells the other shutim, you go shechted for both of us. So now I'm shechting it on behalf of both of us. We already learned that tvicha could be done through a shliach because ma mechira yidayacher af tvicha yidayacher, and I'm doing the das man shutiv. We're both liable. Now shutiv shutav shleim that's chaver. There is when one of the shutim that were crooks ended up stealing from his shutiv also when he shechted it even they didn't want. Yeah. Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah, shkoyach. Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah. Macher chutz mishloishim yoy. What if I said I'm selling you this, but for 30 days from this month I get to use it. So it's not a full sale because there's a timeshare on it. Or chutz mi melachta. I'm giving it to you if you want shekel any time, but work with it. That's mine. Or chutz mi obra. If it has a baby, if it has a pregnancy, that obra is mine. Now, true, but lemaisa, I'm still withholding. I'm withholding something. It's not a pure sale. So aliba demand the Omar. If the old uber is part and parcel of the body of the mother, it's pasha that's called a shear. The hashaybo. If the old uber is not part and parcel of the mother, what we do we say even though it's not technically part of the mother, but it's in the mother, it's connected to the mother. So that's called a shear, and therefore you would not be chayiv dal vei. Since of course eventually the animal is going to give birth, and this is destined to be separated from its mother, lo have a shear, and therefore you are chayiv dal vei. There's another perspective with which we can analyze this case. Even the lav yerchimu, if you'll do lav yerchimu, lo have a shear. It's not a shear; it's not part of the mother. Maybe you'll say even the tzarich l'shteriye ba'ada b'shchita. How would this ben pekul become mutter only if its mother got shechted? So you see, they're connected because the shechita on the mother is going to be mat to the child, mind the shari b'kufadami, and therefore it's not chayiv dal vei. Teku, the Gemara blibes with a take. Boy Rapapa, Gunva, what if you stole it first and then kata? Then you cut off a piece of machra. So now you didn't sell whatever you stole. Mahu, mi amrinin my degana of holei zovin. Lamais, I didn't sell all of what I sold, out of what I stole, because I cut off a piece of it. Adilma, Ma dezovin holoi shire. The what I did sell, I sold everything that's there. I didn't create any holdback in the sale. Teku. Okay, gewaltig. We will be mamshech. Bez Hashem on Shabbos Kodesh.
Ich bin gewesen in einer Milchfarm. Ich bin noch nicht, wenn sie sehr klein, kommen sie in sein
Oh, Akiva's here from Eretz Yisrael. Gewaltig.
Yeah.
How are you,
Hold on, let me
Akiva?
change the background. Baruch Hashem.
Give us greetings
Let
from
me
Eretz
just-
Yisrael.
Let me just get rid of the background. There you go. Erev Shabbos.
this is
and
a real
Eretz
background.
Yisrael. Yeah, there you go.
Akiva,
quite
there's a
weird.
Hamas guy behind you. Duck. There's a Hamas guy behind you.
You look brown. Are you a nidme?
What did he ask me? What did he
He
say?
asked you if you're a Nidme. You come from Jewish
No, no,
parents,
no.
but you look like you're African.
That's okay. Well, once the Eretz Yisrael changes, Avira
I
right
don't know,
away
but the
here.
sun
become
is
a
behind him.
different
It's
person.
bright sunshine. Someone told me
Yeah,
that it's
it's
80
hard to
degrees in
see.
Eretz Yisrael, and with the wind chill, it's 79.
Right. Very good.
Just to
Have
make
a
you
good
feel good, it's
Shabbos.
minus 11 now.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm following because the enjoyment I get from you being cold is greater than me being warm.
That's why I'm telling you we're cold. I want to enhance your vacation.
Very good.
So where are you?
Anyway, I'm in Shari Chesed.
You're
or
lying.
Latavia.
I can see your background. You're in Florida. You just told us you're in Israel.
No, I'm not. I'm actually in Gaza. What am I going to tell you? No, I'm in Shari
Very
Chesed.
nice.
Really, the Knesset is right behind me. I wanted to show you a picture of the Knesset. I hope to go to the Knesset on Monday.
Don't. Akiva,
Don't go to the
He
Knesset?
means the basicnesses.
No, I don't want.
Gewaltig.
No. Too bad. I'm
So
going to
share
go.
with us a good experience from Eretz Yisrael.
I could tell you that
I mean, the peanuts
it's a
good on the
land.
plane. Important stuff.
No, it's a land worth fighting for, and I know it's we can't give away 1 inch. I met the soldiers on Wednesday, and it's unbelievable. And they're
My doctor
fighting,
told
and
me
there's
that
a
I have to
reason
give away at
behind
least 6 inches.
it. We're going to give away any real estate. It should be around our waist, not in Eretz Yisrael, not an inch, never again, never again. That's it. And Mashiach is on its way. Tomorrow's Yud Shvat. Mashiach is on its way.
Yud Shvat, Motzad Yud Shvat is my anniversary.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Mazel tov.
On my
Yeah.
Akiva, if you have a big amunah that Mashiach will come in Yud Shvat, then you're not a Gal Tziyana. Because if you're a Gal
Why?
Tziyana, you would not be in Israel for Bias Mashiach. You would want to be in America because then you get a free ticket.
Yeah, I know, but you can't go direct now. The free
Uh-huh.
ticket would take me through 3 stops. Forget it.
What do you mean? The eagle doesn't make stops.
The what?
The eagle.
Right. Eagles nonstop. That's true.
Gewaltig. Beautiful.
Anyway, thought of all of you. I davened for the shear at the Kaisel this morning.
Oh, thank you.
Had you all in mind.
Thank you very much. Have a
Mati,
wonderful,
every
wonderful
time I
Shabbos.
look at French fries.
You need the shidduch.
What's
Meilig
that?
in our background.
Which
Ele meilig
Meilig?
tzvi ben Ruchel, yeah? Tzvi ele meilig or the meilig tzvi? Write it
Who's
down.
in tzvi?
Meilig tzvi ben Ruchel.
Okay.
Get out of here fast.
If you daven for me, you could just say, Simon, I have an account.
Okay. He knows. He already said, oh, I know Simon. I recognize him.
Oh, he said that? Or he said, you
Baruch
don't even know
Hashem.
what you owe me? I'm not
Yeah,
letting you go
he's-
until you get in here.
You too.
Gewaltig. Gewaltig. Okay, be my shliach. Have a
Oh, yeah,
wonderful,
man.
wonderful
Okay, have a
Shabbos.
great Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.